The UJ Press has recently released their latest publication titled The Inclusive Economy Criteria, Principles and Ubuntu. Compiled by author, economist and lecturer Dr. Arno van Niekerk, this book is described as a handbook for the new economy. This book also details the link between economic inequality and exclusion caused by some of its structural features. Dr. van Niekerk joins us now via Zoom to discuss this book further. Dr. van Niekerk, a very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, Simphize.
Good to have you on the show this morning, Dr. van Niekerk. First of all, give us a brief description of what the inclusive economy is all about.
Yeah, so the inclusive economy is an economy driven by inclusive growth for the purpose of yielding genuine economic progress and also developing equality of opportunity and also broader well-being, not just for people, but also for the planet. So it's really about rebalancing and recalibrating the economy so that we develop a much more sustainable economy, but also an economy that provides true economic empowerment for the bottom part of our society.
Now, do unpack for us, if you can, this missing link that is said to be at the center of today's capitalism.
Absolutely. I think capitalism is in a major challenge or crisis situation, especially after the global pandemic, as many economies are starting to restore, but a crisis in the sense that it's becoming increasingly unsustainable. Why? Because I think most of it is driven by Western individualistic thinking and very much excludes the majority of populations as economic inequality, as poverty rates, as many of those factors starts escalating. So I think with the emphasis here on inclusion and especially the African concept of Ubuntu being central to this, it puts the humans or the human side of the economy at the center, to say that the economy is actually about providing more opportunities and also building capacity for all and not just for a few.
Now, the book's foreword is written by Philip Molefe, and you're also in conversation with him at its launch earlier this month, yeah? Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so we had the book launch at Exclusive Books at Rosebank, and Philip Molefe, a very close friend of mine and a well-known South African, if I can put it like that, and yeah, somebody who brings a unique perspective to what this book brings to the table, and that is appreciating, the important role of Ubuntu, because I think Africa has something to offer the world. And this is something that Philip emphasizes in many ways, but we had good conversations about this. And I think the challenge is Ubuntu has never been able to be put into an economic value context, adding a new value in terms of how we develop the economy, how economic growth takes place. And with this book, the emphasis is really to bring the collective consciousness, that which, brings a broader understanding of how economic progress can take place in society through Ubuntu, right to the center stage. And I think that is important because Africa has something very important to provide to the world. And this is something that Phil Molefe also emphasized, and we fully agree that now it's a time for Africa to rise with Ubuntu principles at the very center of how we restructure our economy.
And speaking of Ubuntu, just talk to us about how this book aims to, sort of restore the equilibrium in the economy based on the old African principle of Ubuntu.
Yeah, so I think there's a disequilibrium in the economy. As the international economist, I can tell you, with more increased economic interdependencies through globalization and all the, basically the world becoming a smaller place, a global village. But on the other hand, increased economic exclusion. That's what's causing this disequilibrium in the economy. So with recalibrating the economy through Ubuntu, we are saying that economic progress should be on par with social equity and ecological parity. And this is where Ubuntu, because Ubuntu has a much more holistic perspective and brings a bit of a more balance between nature and humans. For instance, we need to operate within our ecological ceiling, but on the other hand, social equity is very important. Yes, we won't have economic equality for everyone, but economic equity is a major goal that we need to pursue. And with Ubuntu as an underlying principle, the whole focus is to create more access for those that are marginalized in the economy, included, and then out of that create actually more value in the economy. So it's not just inclusion for the sake of inclusion, it's productive inclusion, so that capacity is being built, and also adjusting businesses' value chains so that they don't just give handouts to communities, but they include communities in their value chain so that both the business and the community is benefiting, and therefore you create win-win situations through transformative partnerships.
Now, you mentioned Ubuntu, you also mentioned economic equity, and in the same breath, are you also of the same school of thought that the concept of like growth will trickle down to the masses, the most disadvantaged, is fundamentally flawed? Do you subscribe to this school of thought?
It is, and actually in the book I expose that very thing, that weakness of capitalism, because it's not happening. There is no trickle-down effect to the extent that it should, or it overpromises and underdelivers. So my approach in this is to move away from this hierarchical approach to the economy and put a more networked approach in place. And in a sense, what I do with the proposals in the book is emphasize that we need to decentralize the economy so that the elite is not benefiting at the expense of the majority. There are some unique proposals in the book, for instance, smart redistribution, because we need to emphasize redistribution much better, but not just through taxation, but also through building capacity in communities and transformative partnerships, local business, local communities, local government collaborating, working together based on the same values, and therefore creating better outcomes that are much more sustainable. So I think this is the way forward, especially in a South African context or an African context where the basic ingredients of Ubuntu is already there. There is an inclination to rather move towards collaboration than just competition, and leading eventually to cutthroat competition, and the majority is completely excluded from the economy.
And how do we know if we're making progress towards an inclusive economy?
Well, there are a number of factors that indicate this. So, and the one is inclusive growth. So we need inclusive growth in the context of making sure that people are included both in the process of creating growth and in the outcome of growth. Another indicator, for instance, is the genuine progress indicator, the GPI, that I've indicated in the book as a better measure of economic well-being than just GDP per capita. Other ways are including people in a collaborative economy, and also there's a concept of a circular economy where we actually learn from nature, because as the economy is an ecosystem, so we can learn from nature's ecosystem. And as we align these two frameworks, we know we are moving towards better inclusion. So again, inclusion for the sake of sustainability, and then of course policies in place and also inclusive institutions so as to stimulate this inclusion. So you've got a macro dynamic as well as a micro dynamic collaborating to facilitate better inclusion so that productive capacity can increase in the economy.
Dr. van Niekerk, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was author, economist and lecturer Dr. Arno van Niekerk, and we've been discussing his new book published through the UJ Press, titled The Inclusive Economy.